Hey guys, what's going on? Just wanted to add some context to this video before we started it. Video isn't about the Escort, it's about the Redline. So I was hoping that my next upload was going to be my return to the track. So I was hoping to go to the track this past Sunday, which would have been the 4th. Unfortunately, the Fun Day Sunday got rained out, and that's kind of been the way things have been this past month. Is just the weather has been pretty horrible. It's just been raining every single day. The good news is the temperatures are starting to come down, so when I do go back to the track, it'll be somewhat good. But yeah, it's just kind of disappointing. This year I had planned to really go to the track a lot, and I only went once, and the year's almost over. But yeah, so anyways, yeah, so unfortunately, Fun Day Sunday didn't happen. Hopefully a track video will come out soon. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and start on Project Redline and explain all of that stuff and what's going on with that. And, yeah, so. Hey, what's going on, guys? So, as you can see, this is not the Escort. This is my 2004 Saturn Ion Redline. Well, technically, it's my wife's 2004 Saturn Ion Redline, but she doesn't really drive it anymore on account of the white behemoth out there, the Jeep Grand Cherokee. That's her new ride. I mean, we've had it for like over a year, but anyways, we got that to replace this, but we never got rid of this. The reason why we haven't gotten rid of it is because technically it doesn't run. I know you just saw it driving under its own power. So it runs, but there's a bit of an issue. So yeah, it runs, but technically there's a bit of an issue. Fairly minor, I'm hoping. So yeah, this is the coolant reservoir. And as you can see, it is full of nope right now. Yeah, so normally that would mean cracked block or blown head gasket or something like that. But I'm hoping what it is I'm hoping it's actually the oil cooler. See, the oil cooler on these cars is a air-to-water oil cooler. That shares the coolant with the general cooling system. So basically you have, it's like a water to air intercooler, but instead it's a water to oil cooler. And sometimes what happens is they crack internally. And when they crack internally, it allows high pressure oil to get into the low pressure cooling system, but doesn't allow coolant to get into the oil, which is a good thing. So there's no coolant in the oil, but there's lots of oil in the coolant, so I'm assuming it's the oil cooler that's bad. So yeah, that's going to be the first part of this project. If it's not the oil cooler, this will be a very short project because I'm just going to scrap the thing. I don't know. I mean, part of me wants to rebuild it regardless, but I don't know, I just don't have the want to really do so. So either I can find someone that wants to give it a home and wants to give it a engine, if it comes down to that, or it's going to go to the junkyard. Alright, so yeah, so hopefully it's the oil cooler, because I'd really hate to scrap this thing. Even maybe if it's a head gasket, I may fix it. I don't know, I haven't really decided yet. But if it's just the oil cooler, I'm going to fix the cooler, and I'm just going to clean all this up. And it's just really nasty. It's lived part of its life on the beach, not on the actual beach, but beach side. So it's had to deal with a lot of ocean spray, salt water. So anything that can rust has rusted. Anything that can corrode has corroded. or oxidize. So yeah. Anyways, first things first, I'm going to go ahead and get that oil cooler off. And before I get the oil cooler off, I've got to drain the coolant or oil or mixture, the slurry. So to do that, there's a drain valve that is on the passenger side, bottom of the car, right on the radiator. You can pull that out, and it should mostly drain out of there. It's I ran just water in here, so luckily the oil mixture is still liquid. This actually happened once before. When it happened before, there was Dexcool in here, and I don't know what the hell's in Dexcool, but when it mixes with oil, it turns into Play-Doh. It turns into just this pudding consistency slush that doesn't flow and takes forever to wash out of the system. So I'm hoping this goes a little smoother, since all I had in here was just plain water and water wetter. It looks like it's still liquid and it's not sludge, so we'll see what happens when I drain this out. It's amazing how much higher that made it. This doesn't look like that'd be that much, but it is. It's like a difference between being able to work on it and not. Alright, let's get up under there and get this. I'm gonna put some gloves on. Alright, I got some disassembly to do, and then I'll check back in with you guys. Alright, so what we got going on here is this is up under the car. Here's the car and front of the car. So there's some plastic cladding that has to come off. So it's those little bunch of these guys. They pop out. This whole thing pops out. So there's one back behind the wheel. You have to get one of these little suckers that are back behind the wheel. But once you get it off, you can drop. There's a piece of plastic that normally covers most of this. Once that's out of the way, it makes it a little easier to get in here. Alright, so what we're looking at, what we're looking for, is right here. There's a drain plug. It just unscrews out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that out and let the ooze. Just kind of wanted to show you where it actually comes out from when you. It's not really a plug you pull. It's just more of a spout. So you see where that's dripping from? That's what happens is you open that up. Now there's nothing coming out. There we go. So I'm gonna open that up, and then I'll open this up, and that should start flowing. There it goes. So that's a pretty small orifice. I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of oil out of there. And I've let this sit long enough that I think all the oil has moved to the top of the system, which is why we're seeing nothing but coolant now. It's actually set. It's been sitting for about 8 months, so I think what's happened is that the oil and water has actually begun to separate. So we'll just let that drain, let that piss out of there. And we'll check back in a little bit. There we go. Now we're down to the Hershey's. That's all that oil starting to leak out of there. If I was a smarter man, I might have let this warm up a little bit, so the viscosity got a little looser. But oh well. Still going pretty slow because of how thick that oil is. So I went ahead and I made a little adapter here. This is part of a kit for burping a coolant system, and these are just some fittings I had. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pressurize the system slightly. It worked pretty well. Alright. I think she's empty. Alright, so we got a pan full of the slurry. So next thing I'm going to do, disconnect the battery. And then I'm just going to start removing stuff that'll make it easier for me to access that oil cooler. The oil cooler is basically right up under the supercharger. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and pull the supercharger off. This isn't too bad of a job. I mean, literally, it's almost just pull the belt off. There's a connector here. There's some vacuum lines that desperately need to be replaced. Another vacuum line, connector for the throttle body, a couple more vacuums, and the intake elbow. And we should be able to pop that off. Well, let me gather some tools. Alright, first thing I'm going to do, get in here, take this belt off. Not the most elegant solution, but it works. Alright, belt's off. And you have a 7mm that connects the intake tube. It's slightly better. So, like I said, connector here, a line that comes off from here. This line comes off from there. And there's the throttle body that's up under. You just kind of have to feel for it. And then there's a 7mm for the elbow here. So, I believe that is everything on the supercharger. We can crack those loose. Number 6 Allen for the bolts here, I believe. I think. Guess I'll use a wrench just to be safe. Yeah, of course you can't fit a wrench in there. A socket. Put one in there. Can't fit it in there because engineers are engineers, man. Let me find a long enough Allen to get in there. Number 6, ball head, not great for breaking stuff loose because they tend to snap the heads off. They're meant for speed, but hopefully it's not too tight. Of course it's tight. It's the tightest one. Yeah, these ball head Allens really have a bad habit of breaking. There's 4 bolts. Should. That bolt out of there. Probably should have blew this out. I'm probably gonna get all types of crud down in there. Here's the blower. Now with the supercharger off, we've got a little more room to work. Just want to get rid of all the loose stuff. So, a little interesting fact for those of you not familiar with the Ion Redline or the Chevy Cobalt SS. 2.0 liter supercharged Ecotech. The intake manifold is actually also a intercooler. So it's an air-to-water intercooler. There's actually a separate heat exchanger that sits in between the radiator. Well, it's behind the AC condenser in front of the radiator. It's actually a pretty efficient little setup. It's actually I mean, these cars are really underappreciated. So, I've got to remove some other stuff to get down here. Probably going to go ahead and, like I said, disconnect the battery. I'm going to remove the ECM and this fuse box and all this stuff and just clear all this area, because this little sliver of silver here, this little guy right here is what we need to get to. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all the stuff out of the way. Probably not gonna film a lot of it because it's just a lot of stuff and a lot of stuff to edit. So figure you should be able to figure it out on your own. I'll check back in with you. So it seems like all the rubber hoses didn't like sitting with coolant or with oil in them because they're bleeding, like they're seeping. Sweating is the word I'm looking for. So I'm probably going to have to replace every single coolant line on this thing. So there's like oil leaking through, just seeping through the rubber. Alright, so there's 3 clips on the fuse box. One on the side, or one here, and then one in the back. You pull the tabs out from the bottom, and then the whole fuse panel lifts up from out of its little nestled hole. And three bolts on top. They don't come all the way out, they just unscrew, and that will allow you to just unplug these guys. You can remove that. That out of the way, those out of the way. Should be able one more, and another 10mm bolt. And you can lift this out of the way. Except for the wires that are attached to it. Jesus. Alright. What a pain that is. Now I can plainly see the cooler. Alright, well now we can see the oil cooler. It's right here. Pop these 2 lines off. These come in super handy for type of thing. Ew. Frothy, frothy. Oh yeah, no, we still got plenty of sludge left in here. Great. Alright, so to get this cooler off, there's, zoom you in here. Alright, so, I forget what these are, I think they're like T15, but there's one here, one back there, on the side, and I think there's one up under. Not too bad to get to. So pop those loose and the oil cooler is off. Get this air box out of the way. This is honestly a horrible car to work on. Just changing the filter on this thing was a nightmare because I basically had to do almost the same thing minus removing the supercharger just to get to the damn air filter. It's the starter ground, I believe. It's just stretched across so tight I can't get the thing out. That out of the way. Stupidest fucking goddamn thing in the world. Pain in the ass. Alright. Now I can get to the rest of the bolts. There actually isn't. Yeah, that's it. Those are the only things that hold it on. So there's only 3 bolts to hold that cooler on. Also, just be prepared, you're going to drop oil all over the place. Alright, so we think. Alright, so we think this guy right here is the culprit. We get all the sludge out of there, and then we'll move on to troubleshooting. Alright, so like I said, this isn't my first time doing this on this exact car, which is kind of frustrating, but I did go with a very cheap cooler at the time because I just didn't have the money to do it any other way. So this is the cooler. Like I said, it's a water to oil cooler, or oil to water cooler, however you want to say it. Oil flows through this side and coolant flows through this side, and they're supposed to be separated internally. But what happens, it's very common on these and basically any other car that uses these, is they crack internally and you end up with a bunch of oil inside of your coolant. The reason why you have oil in your coolant and not coolant in your oil is because the oil pressure is usually substantially higher than your coolant pressure. Coolant pressure is only going to be about 15-16 psi. Oil pressure is going to be 10 to 60, 70, 80 psi depending on the vehicle. So you generally don't get. And then plus the viscosity of the oil is much lower than the viscosity of the water, so it's easier for the water to enter into the oil than vice versa. So anyways, you usually end up with oil in your coolant. So anyways, did this before. Went ahead, I built a little manifold. All this is just allows me to connect an air line and clamp this to this guy. Do need a little O-ring. I don't think I have one that's big enough. It kind of sucks. It's just barely big enough. It might work. Thought I had some bigger ones. We'll see if that works. Alright, so what I've got set up here is basically I have air going into the oil side, and I have some soapy water in on the water jacket side. And as you can see, we've got bubbles coming out as I add more air, and a lot more bubbles coming out. So that confirms we have a leak in the oil cooler. So good news is the engine in the Redline is not junk. There's no blown head gasket or anything catastrophic. It's just a, let me move my stogie out of the way. It's just a you know, $100 or so oil cooler and a bunch of time. Oh, a little too much. But yeah, you can definitely see we definitely have a breach. Super annoying because this is the second time I've had to do this. So, anyways, that's probably going to end this video. We've got a diagnosis. We know what's wrong. I obviously don't have any parts right now to fix it. So I'm going to go ahead and order the parts that I need, which is a new oil cooler. Going to order a new oil filter too, because it's past due on an oil change. And I guess I'm going to have to order all new lines, like every single coolant line, every heater hose, every little tiny line, because they're all I don't trust them because they're sweating oil right now. So yeah. So yeah, I need to order that, and then before I switch out all the hoses, I'm going to need to flush all the oil coolant mixture that's in there out, and I think I got an idea of how I'm going to do that. Last time I just kind of flushed out as much as I could, collected the bulk of it and dumped it, took it to the dump, and then the rest of it I just kind of flushed out into the street, so it was mostly water with a little bit of oil, and you're not supposed to do that, but I thought it was mostly clean, but it wasn't, so I'd like to avoid doing that, so what I'm going to try and do is a closed loop flush using a couple of buckets and like some type of pump or something, and then just let it sit here and run for a few days, since I don't need the car. I've got 3 other cars I can drive right now, so or 2 other cars, no, 3. Yep, I got 3 other cars I can drive right now, so this isn't like something I need to have running. So yeah, I'm gonna try a couple of buckets with like a heavy detergent mixture in it, and then just kind of let it sit and cycle for days. So the idea is that I can build kind of an oil trap where the majority of the oil will get contained in one bucket, and then I don't know. But anyways, that's for another video right now. So that basically concludes part 1 of Project Redline. The engine's not junk. We'll get her back up and going. Just gonna take some time. Till next time.